Hello, everyone. This is Tony Lawson, CEO and co-founder of Shoppe Black. Today, I'm joined by Alyson Lawson, the CEO of Rae Lawson Enterprises, franchisee and operator of two 7-Eleven convenience stores located in Arlington, Texas. How are you doing today, Alyson?
I am doing great, just working.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
So you may not know it, but we actually have a few things in common.
Okay.
Yeah, she's like, uh-oh, what's about to happen now?
I love to hear it.
So other than the fact that both our last names are Lawson, there's that, right? You
Uh-huh.
just had a birthday this month. My birthday was this month as well.
Okay. You're
So
probably on the Leo side, huh?
I am on the Leo side.
Yeah.
I was on the 6th. You were like a few days ago?
The 24th, yes.
Lord, okay. Happy belated birthday.
Thank you. I turned 19.
And you're also a Delta. So is my wife. My wife's a Delta too.
There we go. I always say people who marry Deltas are very lucky individuals.
Yes, we are. We are. And lastly, we both went to HBCUs. You took the Hampton route, but I went to Howard. So there's that. We won't get into that right now. Let's let's handle some business. So, Rae Lawson Enterprises. How did you get started? What's the background there? How did you get into owning a franchise or two?
Oh my goodness. It came out of nowhere. So my parents are both entrepreneurs. My mother is a realtor in Dallas, one of the top realtors in Dallas, and she's amazing and very social. And my father franchised 3 McDonald's in the Oak Cliff area in Dallas. And so he's very business savvy. So I kind of had like the best of both worlds and the best of both personalities. But I wanted to work my way up in corporate America. I had every intention of being a director of operations, then, a COO. But I definitely wanted to work my way up in corporate America. I never thought about franchising. But I was sitting in corporate America and I felt disrespected. And I felt underappreciated, not by all of upper management, but I just felt underappreciated. And I thought to myself, like, what's my next move? And I reached out to a couple of franchises, and 7-Eleven was the first one to reach back. And probably the best one that I could have gotten into so far.
Okay. So you actually won your first franchise, is that correct? In a contest?
I did. I won a contest. And people always tell me like, oh, you won, what'd you do, write an essay? It wasn't like that. Like 7-Eleven is not just passing out stores to people because they know how to write. So I had to go through the regular franchising process of anybody who wants to be a franchisee, because I want to make sure that although we're going to get to the contest part eventually, we want to make sure that you are even right to be a franchisee of what we would pick if you were paying full price.
Sure.
So I went through the franchising process, background check, credit check, did all of the business plan layout, all of that. And once that was done, we had to make a 2-minute video as to why we think that we should own a 7-Eleven. And it was a women in franchising contest, so it was all women. And I won with 45,000 votes. And just put it in size, the second person had 35,000 votes. Oh, and so I always say, yeah, so they did a military contest before that, and the person won with 1,000 votes. So leave it up to women to show you all how to do it. But yeah, so I won my first store, and that one opened in October of 2018. Okay.
So what was it about your essay or your speech that convinced them, that swayed everybody so much?
Yeah, so it wasn't an essay, it was a video. And I'm so glad you asked that, because I was raised by my community. I have great parents, but my mother was very social and she was very in tune with our community. So I was raised by my whole community. My video was about whenever you put businesses in the community, they should be a positive impact on the lives of others. And I wanted to be that positive impact for others. A strong African, no, I'm just kidding. I was about to give you the whole speech. But but basically that's what I wanted to do. Like, I wanted to be a strong African-American female in my community, being a positive example and giving back to others. Sure. Dr. Harry Robinson at the African-American Museum in Dallas, Texas, gave me my first job as a junior docent. Leonard Jones taught me how to play golf for free at no expense to Black children in the Oak Cliff area. And at his golf courses at Cedar Crest Golf Course in LB Houston, and which eventually got me a full scholarship to Hampton University.
Nice.
And so it was people like that who took their platform and made something for kids.
Sure.
And I wanted to do the same exact thing with my community and be a positive example.
Sure. You want to pay it forward.
Yes.
No, that's amazing. So based on your experience so far, what are the pros and cons of owning a franchise as opposed to, maybe like starting your own business from scratch?
Right. And I always talk about that. Anybody who starts their own business from scratch, kudos. Like that is probably one of the hardest things and the ones that I give the biggest respect to, because not only do you have to figure out what your product or your talent is, you have to figure out where the materials are coming from. You have to figure out bank accounts and credit card machines and all, like, it's just a lot for people who start from the ground up. So I have so much respect for those people. But for me, franchising was buying into something to whereas I could be my own boss, hire my own people, make my own rules. And people always think like franchising is you're pretty much paying 7-Eleven and it's not like that. Like at the end of the day, 7-Eleven can come into my store and they can't touch my employees. They can't tell them what to do. They can't tell me who and who not to hire. And so it pretty much is me running my store, and they come in to see where they can help and assist weekly. So I will say that buying into it made it a lot easier. Because on my first day, whenever I walked in, everything was set up. All my inventory was there. All of my ordering systems were there. My bank accounts were like, it was just so much simpler. But it's very hard. Both of them are also very hard to run at the same time.
Okay. So you have, your franchises both have gas stations. Was there an option to get one without gas stations or?
Oh yeah. You have the option to do one, but it doesn't, like, you have to go pick out a store that doesn't have gas. Like my store that was being built was going to have gas in it. So if I wanted a store that didn't have gas, I needed to go find another one in which they were selling.
Sure.
So no, they tell you where they plan on building them. And you pretty much decide if that location is good for you.
Okay. So why did you decide on your location? What made you decide on that one?
I am on one of the biggest corners and the busiest corners in Arlington. They just built a new shopping center across the street. The mall is one exit up. And it literally is the center of what's going on in Arlington.
Nice. So, all right. So moving on to the Black Girl Magic story. That was really interesting. That's actually how I came across your information. It's like, it'd be great to chat. So one of your locations recently, or maybe not recently now, a few months ago, started stocking the Black Girl Magic collection from McBride Sisters. And from those who don't know, that's the largest Black-owned wine company in the country. Tell us that story, how you got in contact with them and how things have gone since then.
Yeah, so originally I saw it. One of my really good friends works for their distributor. And I saw where he's the manager of diversity for the distributor. And so I saw where he was showing the product and pushing the product. He was going to radio stations. And so he was really like trying to show how well this company is, and try to grow it. And I just happened to see it on his Facebook page, and I was like, hey, what's going on? Like, I would love to have a Black-owned product in my store. So I initially just put a box or two in there and just kind of pushed it on my social media. People came to buy it. But eventually I started seeing it on more and more like pages. Like, does anybody know where to get this from? Especially when the wave hit after George Floyd, and everybody was like big on supporting Black-owned businesses even more. And so people were like, dropping like Black-owned products in groups and like, hey, has anybody seen this? And I was like, hey, I have it at my store. And I should have been more prepared because it literally sold out in 1 minute. And so ever since then, I've grown more and more. My orders become bigger and bigger. I sold 1,100 bottles in 2 days, my last order, which is unheard. I sell more wine than Kroger's in a month. So I sold more wine than Kroger's in a month in those 2 days. Wow. So it just grew and grew and grew. And a large part of it is social media. So a lot of people already knew about the McBride Sisters, but like most products, a lot of people don't. So it was me literally pushing everything on social media. And it just blew up from there, word of mouth, and it has gotten big.
Clearly. Wow.
Yeah.
1,100 bottles in 2 days, you said?
Yes.
I think when I actually published the store initially. It was like 100 bottles in like a few days. I think
Uh-huh.
that's where then I was like, wow, that's crazy. No, that's
Yeah.
amazing. So like, have you come across any other Black-owned brands or products that, you'd be interested in stocking, and like what would they need to have in place? Because, I'm sure every business owner would be like, yeah, put me in your store, put me in your store. But what do they need to
Right.
have in place in order for that to happen and for it to make sense for you also as a business owner?
Right. And I always tell people, like, I would love to I would love to have a whole wall of like Black
Sure.
owned businesses in my store. But it's just not possible.
Right.
Because there are rules. Like whenever you're doing franchising, there are rules to certain things. And 7-Eleven has done a really good job at making sure that they give you a variety of products.
Yeah.
And for safety, insurance purposes, they want to make sure that we use these products. We can bring in other products, but it's only a certain percentage. And so the whole reason why I have the McBride's is because they were already one of our vendors, like one of the 7-Eleven vendors. So I always tell people, if you want to be in our system and you want franchisees to be able to buy from you,
Yeah.
then contact 7-Eleven and get into the 7-Eleven system in order for everybody to be able to see you. Now, don't get me wrong, I can bring in products, and I do bring in outside products, but I try to stay away from food and drinks. And one, because some of those food and drinks compete with what 7-Eleven has going on, and I make a lot of GP off of those products.
Gotcha.
And so that's just a business move. But two, also just for insurance purposes, I try not to do anything edible within the store. And a lot of franchisees are like that, but some aren't. So you'll be able to find some that are not like that, and they'll be more than glad to put your product in the store. But being young and, an African-American woman, I want to make sure that I am as safe as possible.
Of course. Protect your business interests.
Exactly.
Ideally, what type of products would make sense then? Because, you mentioned food and drinks may not be the best, but what, in a perfect world?
So food and drinks may not be the best for me, but that doesn't mean that the franchisee down the street or a franchisee in another neighborhood, it won't be a good thing for them. So right now I have most of my products that sit on my counter are all 7-Eleven brand products because they make me my highest GP.
Gotcha.
But maybe a franchisee in another area, they're not selling as well for the 7-Eleven products. So putting putting somebody else's food on the counter may be a thing.
Yep.
So what doesn't work for me does not mean that it won't work for another franchisee. But there's so many. I brought in Ride Fresh, which is an air freshener that you hang from the top of your rear view mirror. Yes, I got rid of the trees. And put those in there. So you never really know what is going to be in hit. You just have to take it by case by case.
Sure, that makes sense. All right. So in terms of future plans, do you plan on getting more 7-Elevens? Are you interested in getting other types of franchises that may complement what you already have, or trying to stick with what's working for now? Or you're like, look, two's enough. This is enough headache. I'm sticking with two.
It's so funny because I'm like, one's enough. I'm okay. And then two came along. I'm like, two's enough. So who knows? I always tell people I don't set goals for myself. I don't. People are always like, what's your goal in life? Or even whenever I go talk to kids, they're like, tell them about your goals. And I'm like, I don't really have any. I'm a big believer on taking waves as they come. And I'm a big believer on capitalizing whatever comes your way. For me, whenever I set goals, if I don't make them, I automatically get sad. It doesn't motivate me. It saddens me, So I always like to say, and then also what if my goal is too small? What if I'm capable of so much more, but I'm only looking at this goal? So I never set any goals. What's next for me is to run my 2 stores as much as possible, be within my community, help out continue to do interviews and talking to children. That's my passion. And that's it. And just see where it grows from there.
No, that's great. What message are you trying to impart, or are you imparting to children right now?
I always tell children to be you. And I think that a lot of times, when I was in corporate America, I felt like I had to be so straight and narrow. I felt like I had to be a certain way. I felt like because I wore a suit every day that I had to be, I tell people all the time, there was times whenever I was in corporate America, I would go to the restroom and be like, because I'm such a goofy, energetic person, but I was having to restrict it in the environment in which I was in.
Right.
And I would not be here today if it was not for me being me. If you look at my social media page, I'm dancing, I'm singing, not very well, but I'm doing all of those things. I'm engaged, I'm doing, and that is kind of how I got to where I am today and how my customers enjoy me to be. So I always tell kids to be you.
Right.
And then the other thing that I always tell kids is that there's always a hater in the room.
Mm.
Always. There's always a hater in the room. There's always somebody who's going to think or say out loud that you can't do it. There's always somebody who's going to try to put your name down behind your back. But you have to continue to be you.
Yeah.
And to know your worth. And to know that, like, don't address all haters. They're always going to be there.
They're always going to be there. That's great advice for adults too.
Yeah.
That's advice for everybody across the board.
Yeah.
And
it doesn't stop.
No, it doesn't, unfortunately. But yeah, so in wrapping up, what advice do you have for entrepreneurs specifically?
Ooh, entrepreneurs. My thing will be the same thing. Go for it.
Okay.
Like, especially in this, especially like the BU part, because right now the society that we're living in is full of social media. And I say that social media doesn't restrict you to just your city. Now I have followers from like overseas. So like it lets people know exactly what's going on here. And especially if you're starting your own business, that's not a brick and mortar, but you're like doing something online, you have to set yourself apart from other people. So you need to continue to be you and be heavy on social media in order to do so.
That's great. Great advice. So thank you so much for joining us, for dropping those gems.
Oh, thank you.
Best of luck with business and your speaking gigs as well. You're definitely passing on some great advice. So please continue doing so.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for joining us. Take care.
All right.